Welcome. Thank you so much for joining. Hi, Jean. Thank you for being my co-host tonight as we talk about the not so taboo, but kind of taboo topic of speeding tickets and reckless driving, especially here in Virginia. And thank you, Alexis, for joining. Just going to do a very brief overview of what taboo talks entail, and then we can get started. But I started this group because, as an event professional that helps with end of life events and divorce parties and other taboo topics, I created a group that would allow people to openly discuss these things without worrying that people might judge them or things might, be said outside of the meeting. So, really don't have a lot of rules for these discussions. They're usually just not scripted or no presentations. We usually just let the discussion go as it needs to go to whatever place that the stories take us or the questions take us. So all I ask though is that if you do hear something that you might not that other person might not enjoy your repeating, please don't do that. That's normally, but this is recorded, so it's all good. Tonight we can share our speeding ticket stories. I will definitely be doing that. But so yeah, so again, my name is Laden, and I own Leave It to Me, which is a event management company, and also the founder of these Taboo Talks. And I am so excited that Jean agreed to be my co-host tonight. She's the expert on all this, actually. So, but Jean, go ahead, and if you could introduce yourself and talk about your book, that would be great.
Oh man, I have to talk about how great I am. Let's see. Well, my name first, thank you for having me on the show. I am very excited to be here. My name is Jean Humbrecht. I'm a criminal and traffic defense attorney. My main office is in Manassas, Virginia. And what I do is I help people keep their jobs, keep their driver's licenses, and stay with their families and remain productive members of society. So I represent people charged with anything from minor traffic infractions up through serious felonies, even including murder. I've had a few murder cases. I have been, I graduated law school in 2010. I started working on Capitol Hill. I was there for a few years. And while I was working on Capitol Hill, I went to GW to get my LLM, which is a master's in litigation, because I always wanted to be a trial attorney. So I did that for 2 years because I was working full time and going to school almost full time. And then in 2014, I left my job on the Hill. I went with a small criminal defense firm in Fairfax. And after a few months, I started my own. So going on 7 years now of having my own firm. I love what I do. And I'd been thinking for a while about writing a book. And there are so many things you can write about. And criminal defense attorneys and attorneys have written on so many different things. So I wanted to do something that not a lot of people have written about, and I was going back and forth with a few options. And one of the ideas that I had was firearm laws, because somebody actually came up to me and said, "How come attorneys don't write on firearms laws? I don't see any blogs about that." And I said, I don't know, no particular reason. And a lot of firearms laws have changed in 2020 in Virginia, so I thought about maybe doing that and talking about the changes in law. But then I thought, well, even if I make this completely apolitical, not political, maybe I don't want to go down this road. So I thought, what would most people relate to? And then I came up with speeding tickets. And then I thought, how am I going to write a whole book about speeding tickets? I couldn't stop writing, actually, because there are a lot of ways that speeding tickets affect your life, and some of them I did not know until I even sat down to write the book. Like, for example, but we'll get into more details. For example, speeding tickets and a bad driving record can actually impact your ability to get life insurance, because life insurance companies view you as a risk. And will somebody be turned down just because of a driving record? Probably not. But you're probably not going to get the rates that you want, or the coverage that you want. So that's how that's my professional background in a nutshell, and why I wrote the book in a nutshell. And we can talk about the personal side of Jean if you want, or we can talk more about the book.
I'm really glad you actually wrote this because I didn't know anything about reckless driving tickets till I got got my own ticket. And it never even occurred to me that I was going 20 miles over the speed limit. It was on the Dulles Toll Road,
Hmm.
and I was by myself, thankfully, because I think if my kid had been in the car, I would have gotten in more trouble. But it was just like a downhill, and all of a sudden, I apparently was going 20 miles over. And when the police officer pulled me over, and said that, I again wasn't really thinking about it until I talked to a lawyer friend, and she was like, "This is really serious." I'm like, "What do you mean?" So, she's like, "You're gonna have to get a lawyer." I'm like, "Are you kidding me right now?" And so I'm like, "I don't need a lawyer. I can do that." And she was like, "No, you need a lawyer, because if you don't get a lawyer, you're looking at a misdemeanor." And I'm like, "What?" And then all these years that would be on my record, and I'm just like, "Okay, okay, I will get a lawyer." So I got the lawyer, and then I preemptively took a driving class. I think it was like at the FedEx thing in Reston. I had to
Hmm.
log in and do some sort of class, because this was not my first speeding ticket. So I was able to eliminate some points so that that would look good in court. And then yeah, it turned just completely turned my life upside down. I didn't tell my parents because they would freak out, and now I'm telling it on a recording. So hopefully I'm not, maybe my parents will see this. Hopefully not. I'm just kidding. I didn't have a ticket. This is all made up. But yeah, so I remember at the time I was seeing a therapist weekly, and he had to really talk me through a lot of my stress, because I had other stress in my life, and then this just compounded it, and I was like just losing my mind. I'm like, "What happens if I have to, like," I'm like, "What? I will lose my license." Like I don't know. I was just like freaking out about everything, and I didn't have one of those lawyers that really did anything much except show up that day. So I don't know if you help people through some of the anxiety of the whole thing, or explain the situation better. But luckily, got there, just had to, I didn't even have to say anything. The lawyer took care of everything behind the scenes. And then I just had to agree to pay some fine. And then it was reduced, I guess, the number of
Hmm.
miles over. But I think all said and done, between the class, the lawyer fees, and the fee, the courtroom, and all that, I'm pretty sure it was a $1,600 ticket. This was many years ago. It must cost more than that now.
That sounds about right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but you know what? 1,600 worth every penny to not have a misdemeanor, and to
exactly.
not have my insurance rates go up, or to
Hmm.
mess up life insurance. My goodness,
Hmm.
that's a fascinating fact. Alexis, did you thank you for joining, by the way.
Oh,
Oh, my Alexa just went off. Oh God, again. Okay, sorry. Shh. So did you have any clue that reckless driving tickets could
no,
cause so many
did not. But I actually did get life insurance recently, so hopefully that will be all. I'll be fine for a while. I don't know if they check after the fact, so I think it's just for when you get it originally.
It is when you get it
Yep.
originally, and unless you try to get better rates or switch companies, then they will review
Okay.
your record. But if you don't plan to make any changes, it's not like auto insurance where they could up your rates every few years. So
Okay,
whatever you
gotcha.
have now, it's not going to get any worse unless you go to a different company.
Gotcha. Okay.
So
Yeah.
is that, Jean, what I kind of went through with going to the class and getting points off your license, or even starting at like negative points, or is that kind of what you instruct your clients to do preemptively?
I always tell people to do a driver improvement class. Now, there's a couple things to keep in mind with that. Um, you can get five in Virginia, you get 5 points back on your license. So in Virginia, everybody starts at 0 points. And for every year of driving without any incident, you get one positive point, and the highest points you can have is 5. If you are negative, that's bad. That means you're either a new driver that got into trouble, or you have just had a lot of tickets. So the most you can have is +5. So if you don't have a great record, or you are a new driver, or you're new to Virginia and you don't have any points in Virginia, you're already starting off behind the game. So I would suggest you do the driver improvement class for a few reasons. One, you'll get 5 points back on your license. Two, it shows the court that you're taking the matter seriously. And also, you can get an insurance discount. You have to choose whether you want to get points or you want an insurance discount. and you can only do one every 2 years. So if I were to do a driver improvement class today and I choose to get 5 points on my license, I can't do that again until April 13th of 2023. But on April 13th of 2022, I could take the class and I could choose to get the insurance discount. So you can do it every year, but you only get the benefit for one every 2 years.
How does one check to see how many points they have?
You log onto the DMV website, and it'll show you right when you log into your account. It'll show your point balance.
Because I think I've been a good girl since I got that ticket, if I remember correctly. I definitely haven't had one in the last 5 years, so I may have some good points. Finally, yay!
Well, the points drop off your record after 2 years, but the conviction. So say you lose 3 points. You start at +5, you get a speeding, and then you're convicted of speeding. They take 3 points off your license. In 2 years, those points will go back.
Okay. So
but the conviction stays.
Okay, this was like 9 years, maybe 10 years ago. So I think
if it was just speeding, then it's not on your record anymore. Well, but reckless driving remains on your record forever because it's a crime.
Oh, that's what, yeah. Oh my gosh. Thank goodness for that lawyer and for the fact that people told me to get one. Because honestly, like these are the reasons why your book is so helpful, and doing things like this talk hopefully will help at least 1 or 2 people. Yeah, if you don't know, you just go in there blindly. Like, actually, you know what? I think lawyers do start reaching out to people preemptively once they get that ticket, right? I remember something about that.
Lawyers can get arrest lists, and it's really a charge list, people that are charged, because when you get reckless driving, most people are not arrested for it. So they can pay to get those arrest lists. We call it arrest list, but a charge list. And then they send out letters. A lot of lawyers do that. Hey, you were charged with X, Y, and Z. I'm here. I can represent you. I don't do that, and that's all I will say about that. But yes, lawyers do reach out, and a lot of people have said that they get all these letters in the mail, and they're so embarrassed because the people they live with, they're like, why are all these letters coming from lawyers?
Yeah, it's coming back to me now. I remember those notices now. That's another thing that I was like, oh, this is interesting. Who sold this list to these guys? So very cool. Well, I guess that is one way for people to find out then, is having that. Hi, Brian. Thanks for joining. I don't want to put you on the spot, Brian. Just wanted to say hi.
Hello.
So, Brian, again, thanks for joining. Jean and I just started talking about tickets and driving in Virginia and getting a reckless driving ticket. And I'm sure this is probably all over the country. There's got to be similar laws where.
Well, there are similar laws, but Virginia just has a lower threshold for what's considered reckless driving. So reckless, oh, he did a thumbs up. Reckless driving in Virginia, well, they recently changed the law. So now it's driving 85 miles per hour or more, regardless of the speed limit, or driving more than 20 miles per hour over the speed limit. So if you're going 56 and a 35, that's reckless driving. Or if you're going 85, that's reckless driving, regardless of where it is. And a lot of people who are passing through Virginia get charged with reckless driving, not realizing that it's a crime, for going more than 20 miles per hour over the limit, because in a lot of states, that's not what it is. And then, they have to deal with coming back to court or hiring an attorney to go to court, because reckless driving, you keep saying reckless driving ticket, and a lot of people say that, but it's not a ticket. It's a reckless driving charge. It's a crime. It's a crime. Yeah, you cannot prepay it. And so sometimes people just blow off the court date for whatever reason. And if they don't go to court, they can either be convicted in their absence, and the judge, they have to waive jail. So the prosecutor has to say, I'm not pursuing jail, in order for the court to do that. So, but you can have your license suspended for up to 6 months. If you don't show up, you could have a fine. Your license could be suspended. You wouldn't even know. You're driving down the road and you get pulled over, and you have to deal with driving on a suspended license. Or if they don't convict you in your absence, they could issue a bench warrant for your arrest for not showing up. And don't think that they won't do that for a minor misdemeanor. I have seen it happen. So,
not to bring in other cases, but that poor kid in Minneapolis, the 20-year-old that was just shot, apparently he had a Zoom court date, but the notice of the Zoom court date was sent to the wrong address.
Mm.
So he didn't even know, and that's what he was pulled over for. So it's just heartbreaking that it wasn't a clerical error, wrong address. Anyway, so tell me, so you've done murder cases, and not just, see, I when you wrote the book and talking to you about that stuff, I never thought you would have handled a murder case. That's or multiple murder cases. So that it brings that litigation, or not litigation, I guess, but the trial,
Yeah.
work that you want. I'm sure the speeding tickets don't really go to trial very often, right? It's
They don't go as often as you would think, because a lot of people, want to, well, reckless they want to avoid jail, they want to avoid the criminal conviction, they want to avoid the points. So they don't go to trial as much as you would think that they do.
so when they go to trial, it's that person saying like, I absolutely was not going 20 miles over, or that's what they're fighting.
It depends on if you have a lawyer or the person is doing it pro se by themselves, because a lot of times when people go to court by themselves, they 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 tell the judge, I want a trial, and they end up just admitting to the offense in the course of the trial. So it's not like they're saying there's no way I was doing it. They'll say it just doesn't go very well.
I was
Um,
gonna say, because they don't have a lawyer. Yeah.
um, but sometimes you can challenge whether the officers. Well, you can challenge a few things, whether because they can measure your speed with lidar or radar, so you can challenge whether the instrument they used was properly calibrated. It just means they were checking it and it was working properly. You can challenge, what your speedometer said, because if you get your speedometer calibrated, an auto mechanic will basically check what your speedometer reads and what speed your car is actually going. Because sometimes in a closed case, if your car says 83, but you're really going 86, that's the difference between reckless driving. So that's another thing that sometimes I would recommend clients. So that there are things you can fight, and one thing you can't really fight is knowing the speed limit, because Virginia law basically imputes knowledge of that on it's in the code what the different speed limits are in different areas.
Got it. Okay.
So
Yeah, no, it's most of my speeding tickets lately have been in DC. I do realize now I did have a few speeding tickets, but they've been in DC, and they were the photo ones.
Oh yeah.
So the first time I got one, in the exact same spot that I got mine, I think a week later, my husband got a ticket, same spot. And so knowing that was going to cost like 100 each, I actually went to DC and had to go in front of the judge, and like this, I'm sure you've seen things like that where there are like multiple people in the room. We were all waiting to go through it. And when I showed the picture, I'm like, how can you tell it's me speeding, not the car in the picture with me? And since they couldn't justify which one was us, which one of us was it, they actually threw out that ticket and my husband's.
Nice.
So that was like, okay, good, this is great. But then the next time, I think I went and it didn't work. So, but yeah, no, it's the camera ones really piss me off, because those, I feel they're just set up to get you. So
well, they really are set up to get you. And I'll tell you about the cameras in Virginia, because I don't know about DC, but in Virginia, it's like a $250 fine for whatever it is that they're claiming that you violated, and you can request a court hearing. You either pay it or you request a court hearing. Now, for the ones that the camera catches, if you just pay it online or you're convicted in court, it doesn't come with any points. It's just the fine. So most people say, okay, I don't have points, whatever, I'll just pay the fine. But you absolutely can request a court hearing, and then they have to bring in an office. They have to bring in somebody to prove that you were doing whether it was speeding or running a red light or running a school bus stop sign. They have to bring in somebody, and usually there is an officer near there who is watching whatever it was that happened, but not always. So I would definitely I always recommend fighting it. Even if you don't want to hire an attorney, you can go to court and challenge that. And
Yeah, the DC ones I will challenge every time from now on. Like there's just no, you know what I mean? Like having 3, I think one was a parking one, the handicap thing, because my daughter has a handicap placard and you get 2 hours or something at the meet. So they changed the law and I'm like, well, where did you post this? How would I know? I don't live in DC. And so I was able to get that ticket or that fine, whatever, removed. And then that one that I just mentioned, but there was one that I couldn't. But so yeah, the DC ones I'll always take the time, just because I actually think the whole process of seeing how it works, right? I mean, you do this daily where you're in the courtroom or whatever, but for me, I'm like, this is, a lesson in how these things work. But so Brian, Alexis, do you have any speeding ticket? Oh, sorry, Brian has limited laptop, no camera and microphone. No worries. You can always send it in the chat if you've had a reckless driving ticket, or if
you don't have to admit if you don't want to. When did the Virginia statute change from in excess of 80 or 20? So July 1st of 2020, the legislature changed the threshold for reckless driving. It was 80, but they changed it to 85 miles per hour or more. The 20 miles per hour is still the law. So you can get a reckless driving charge for driving 20 miles per hour or more over the limit, or driving 85 miles per hour or more.
So where in Virginia is the speed limit more than 65?
Some of the highways.
Really? There are some that are 75?
Yeah, it's as high as 70, yeah.
Oh, okay. So I did not know that.
There are a lot of traps, which I've noticed, having to drive to Richmond and go to courses in like Southern and near Richmond. Yeah.
Interesting.
And there are a lot of traps. You'll be going along and it'll be 70 and you're like, woohoo, and then you speed up and then it's back down to 55 and you're like, oh crap. Yeah. So you got to watch out. And those counties that I don't go to a lot don't want to get a ticket. I can't call somebody up and be like, hey.
Help me. The part in, for those of you watching that are not local, they won't have any idea what I'm talking about. But on Route 7, when you go through Falls Church, there's an area that it drops down to 25 miles an hour in Falls Church on Route 7.
Near Broad Street, that area?
Yeah. So I think it was, I don't even know, 17 years ago. I mean, it's a long time ago. And I don't drink alcohol. So I was the designated driver and I was at a wedding and I was driving the very intoxicated bridesmaids back to their hotel. And we go through the 25-mile-an-hour spot and I get pulled over and, oh, this is going to sound so bad. I shouldn't admit these things. But if it's a male cop, I could cry very easily. And I get, I have gotten out of many a ticket from the tears or had the number of miles I was, the speed, whatever, like they reduce it because I'm crying like a crazy person. Female cop, I don't know why instinctively, I didn't even bother crying. And I explained the situation that I was a designated driver and she didn't care and still gave me the ticket. So when I called to talk to somebody at the courthouse about coming in, I don't remember why I called and didn't just go in. I told my little sob story to the lady that answered and she was like, no, sweetie, you are coming in, you're fighting this. I'm like, really? And she was like, yes, no, you were doing a good thing and you were a designated driver and you need to come and tell the judge that. I'm like, okay. So I went in and did my little thing and told the judge, and the judge said to the police officer, is that what she told you? And she admitted that yes, it was. So I think they just reduced the number of miles I was going over. So I paid a smaller fine, but I'm like, okay, that's right. That's how it should be, man. I was a designated driver. So, but it's amazing. Once you get a ticket, like I said, on the toll road, and I did the reckless driving charge, and I never have gone that fast again on the toll road ever. So I think it works. I think that it sends a clear message. I don't speed on Route 7 ever, especially in Falls Church. And I pay attention. Now Waze tells you how fast you're going. So like there's all these ways that are like, oh, I'm like making sure I'm careful. So I'm sure, Brian, if you've had a ticket, or Alexis, you can put it in the chat. Did it actually help you behave in that spot in the future. So,
Well, I had I didn't have a ticket or anything like that, but um last January, in at 8 in the morning, rainy, dark day, I hit a biker, who I think was intoxicated, at 8 in the morning, riding a bike in the pouring down rain in January. It was freezing too. But I mean, I mean, like every time I drive across a bike path, I'm so uber conscious because I mean, he came out of nowhere and it was like rain. I mean, I wasn't expecting anybody on that bike path. So, I mean, it just totally wakes you up. I mean, like now any bike path, I'm just like Uber, like almost like bus driver, like stop and check because it just makes you so self-conscious. It was, and
Lord,
it was
that must have been so scary.
Oh, it was extremely, but he didn't, I mean, nothing came of it because I guess he was supposed to be at work or something, but it was it was very frightening. And so yes, and it makes you just very like, oh, I just know how, if things could have been so much worse. So it just makes you so heightened for, I mean, hopefully a while it will be that way.
When I first moved to the DC area, there was a Japanese woman who I just started becoming friends with, and a bus in DC hit her while she was bike riding and killed her. So I have a ridiculous fear when people on bicycles in DC or anywhere. Like I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm sure that's what you're like now, but like I have this just panicked way the minute I see these bikes. So I was in DC in the DuPont Circle area. It was one of those areas of
Mm.
DC years ago. And I noticed all these people on bikes because it was like rush hour. They were all going home from work. And I was trying not to hit a pedestrian. So I
Yeah.
slowed down.
Mm.
And then the bike behind me hit my car. And so I lost it. I was like, oh my God, I hit a biker. Oh my God, oh my God. But in reality, he hit me,
Right,
right?
right.
So he comes to the window and I'm like, are you okay? And I'm like freaking out. And he's
Yeah.
like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And he's like, I wasn't following the rules of the
Right,
road. Like he's
right.
like, I'm supposed to follow them the way the cars are, and I didn't. And he dented my minivan,
Wow.
my tail light. Yeah. So he actually, we settled it with like, I went to Honda and found out how much it would cost to get everything repaired. And then he just, I think he PayPal'd me or something like
Yeah.
$700 to pay for it. But I just remember thinking, I'm like, this is just so random. I'm worried about hitting somebody on a bike and a bike hits me. I'm like, like these are the
Yeah.
things that happen to me. And in college, actually was walking and got hit by a bike. So I know that happens to people.
Yeah.
And so like, do you know if people like really do have to follow the rules of the road when they're on a bike? Like, could somebody be charged with having, yeah, interesting.
Hmm.
So have you ever had to represent someone that wasn't driving, but that was on a bike or
I've,
something?
I've never represented somebody that was on a bike. I've represented somebody that was on a moped.
Hmm.
Interesting. They were speeding? I don't think
Uh,
mopeds could go that fast.
this was a long time ago. I think it was a traffic infraction, which is why he was pulled over, but he ended up getting charged with driving on a revoked license. I think that was the big issue. And that's usually what happens. It's a minor infraction that leads somebody to get pulled over and then they discover something else more serious.
Yeah, when I first moved to the area, I didn't know you had to do some sort of registration thing. Like, I guess so I remember being pulled over and being told by the police officer. I mean, I was like 24, maybe, first time I got a job, driving, going to work, and and tells me that I'm missing this thing. And I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. But apparently, like, it had been such a long time without that or whatever that it maybe had been already notified or something. But and he was like, you can't basically, I was told that my driver's license wasn't valid because of whatever had happened. So when I
Yeah.
called to go to fix this issue with the DMV, the lady on the phone was like, your license is not valid, so don't even think about driving here to fix this.
Wow.
Because I was totally going to do that. And then she said, don't think about, and I'm like, shit. So it cost more because I had to take like a cab and do all these.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's ridiculous. They really should have manuals for people like me that have no clue what's going on. Like you should move to an area and they say, okay, little girl, this is what you need. So Brian, any more things you want to add in the chat or questions? I feel bad. You can't be on camera or talk.
So, yeah, do you have, I don't know if you have a chapter about like new drivers and stuff, because I have a new driver, and it's just scary because in the Northern Virginia area, everything's so fast, and phones now are just so like part of the car. Your map is on it, so then you get distracted with texts and things like that. I mean, do you have advice about teen drivers and young kids?
I actually do have an entire chapter about how juveniles are treated differently than
Okay.
adults when it comes to speeding tickets and other traffic infractions. So a juvenile who is charged with any offense, they cannot hide it from their parents. They can prepay it just like an adult over 18 can, but if they prepay it, they have to come to court, and a parent has to come to court, and there has to be a notarized signature that the parent knew about it. And if they're charged with a criminal offense, reckless driving or anything else, parent has to come to court. And if you fight the case, a parent has to go to court. And if the kid as in a person under 18 is charged with anything and has to go to court, a parent will be subpoenaed. And if you do not go to court, you could get a charge for failing to appear, which is contempt of court. So
Wow.
this is serious. In addition to that, any juvenile that is convicted of any offense resulting in points, automatically the DMV is going to require them to take a driver improvement class. And if they don't take that, like just one offense resulting in points, if they don't take that class within 90 days, their license is suspended. If they get two offenses resulting in DMV points before they're 18, meaning the offense date is before they're 18, and they're convicted of two offenses resulting in points, their driver's license will be suspended. If it happens 3 times, their driver's license is revoked. The difference between suspension and revocation is basically if you're suspended, once your suspension period is over, you just pay a reinstatement fee to the DMV and you can drive again. If you are revoked, you have to start all over again. You have to take the knowledge test. You have to take the road test. You have to pay the fee. So you got to go through all that. So that's the difference between suspension and revocation. So that those are some of the ways that just the courts treat it differently. Insurance will go up quicker and more for a juvenile that gets a traffic conviction, more so than an adult. Automatically, the insurance is going to go up because you haven't been driving for a while, so it's not like you can establish a period of good driving behavior, and it's already high for teenage drivers. So those are a couple ways that teenagers are impacted, and those are actually big ways. Oh, and another thing, actually, people think that juvenile records just are automatically sealed when they turn 18, and that is not true at all. If you are convicted of a misdemeanor, that will be sealed 5 years from the offense date or when you are 24, whichever is longer. So if you're 15, whichever is shorter, I'm sorry. So if you're 15 and you get a conviction, it'll be sealed when you're 20. I think that's correct. Yeah. It's 5 years or when you turn 24 for misdemeanor convictions. Felony convictions as a juvenile never go away.
Wow.
Ever. They're on your permanent criminal record. Driving offenses, which is really weird. If a juvenile is convicted of any offense that has to be reported to the DMV, which is more than just traffic infractions. In the past, if you were convicted of a drug offense, your license would be suspended for 6 months. So any offense that gets reported to the DMV, if you're convicted of that, no matter how old you were, like for example, reckless driving, because that's the easiest example, that will remain on your criminal record until you are 29 years old. Wow. I don't know how they came up with that number, but it doesn't go away when you're 18. It doesn't go away when you're 21. It doesn't go away when you're 24 on your criminal record until you're 29. Even if it has dropped off your driving record, because reckless driving only stays on your driving record for 11 years. So say you're 16 and get a reckless driving conviction when you're 27, it's not on your DMV record anymore, but it's on your criminal record until you're 29. So things do not just go away when you turn 18, and a lot of people don't know that.
So, and then that would affect like jobs
Yep.
and things
Yep.
like that, and scholarships in college and things like
It would affect all that. And if you apply for anything, job, military, scholarship, and they fire whatever it is, and they ask if you've had a criminal conviction and you say no, that's a potential other charge for
Right.
lying on a perjury. A lot of people don't know it, so hopefully they won't end up getting convicted. But ignorance of the law is not always
Right.
defense. So yeah, it absolutely will. And I mean, imagine how much we grew and how much experience we got, professional experience between 22 getting out of college and 29. I mean, I
Right.
know I'm much more mature when I'm 20. Imagine all those opportunities that could have potentially been lost because of that.
Right.
So
Alexis, we need to get Jean in high schools talking about this.
Oh, I know. I mean, because there's I'm sure sections in the driver's stuff, but I mean, there's so many other things that they're thinking about when they're reading that and taking the driver's ed. I don't really think that they understand the repercussions of something that they think is pretty small, and peer pressure and texting and this. I mean, there's just so many other things out there that so easily could turn into a reckless driving or hitting somebody, things like that. So
yeah.
I don't think people understand that, and maybe and explaining it to the parents too, because obviously they're not in the cars with them, but to explain like this could affect your scholarships, this could affect your first job. I mean, just telling people the big picture is so important.
hmm And one thing I've noticed with younger clients and definitely teenagers, they they don't think of the long-term consequences. I mean, I can see it in their eyes, and I know they don't care. And I say, okay, I know that you don't want to lose your license right now, but we have an offer that's going to, like, I'm just making things up right now.
Right.
It's going to result in this going away, no misdemeanor conviction, but your license is going to be suspended for 6 months. You can get a restricted license. They don't want to deal with it. They don't want to lose their license, so they'll just take a conviction, or they'll risk a trial, which is their right to do. And yeah, maybe their license is not suspended, but now they have that on their record forever because
Right.
they're thinking about right now and not the future. And even as adults, it's hard, but we obviously are better about thinking about the long-term consequences. So yeah, teenagers and even young adults don't, they just don't think about it.
Yeah.
Or
Have
if
you
you tell them about it, they I don't have kids, so I just know that they just don't
they don't
they don't
think.
think.
They don't think, period. Well, I wasn't thinking about that, Mom. It's like, okay. Thankfully, my almost 17-year-old, this summer she'll be 17, still hasn't even gone to take her permit test thing. So like
Yeah.
I'm just thrilled. I'm like, go ahead. Let's not even talk about it.
You go.
So Brian has a good question
Yeah.
about older people. And since that's kind of my the people I hang with, or the seniors,
Mhm.
it says, for older persons, is there an age at which the courts are more likely to revoke someone's license for a reckless driving charge?
Well, if you're first thing, if you're charged with reckless driving, one of the possible penalties is suspension, not revocation. So the most they could suspend it for is up to 6 months, and you could get a restricted license. Revocation is when it's completely taken away and you have to start all over again. I would say there's not a specific age where they're more likely to suspend the person's license. I think it's just more about the facts of that particular incident and what happened, and whether or not the person should have been driving or knew they shouldn't have been driving and were driving anyway. Now the DMV can suspend or revoke a driver's license. Again, there's no specific age, but if if the DMV basically determines that somebody is a risk, they can suspend or revoke their license. There's a lot of reasons the DMV can suspend your license: failure to pay child support, failure to pay a civil judgment. A lot of reasons your license could get suspended.
Can you go in as a kid, like an adult child like me, 47, and then say my dad, who's whatever age, shouldn't be allowed to drive anymore? You can't just do that. There would have to be some sort of proof or
Yeah.
something,
hmm
right?
hmm
Well, that's so odd with, I mean, because obviously dementia and Alzheimer's runs in my family. And I mean, at one point I took away his keys in the car, but I should have done it sooner. Um, but he wasn't deemed that. I just knew from personal history and all the signs and so many other things, but he didn't have a test that said this is for sure he had it. So that's just scary that then how would you have people that have dementia and Alzheimer's get them off the roads?
The problem is you really can't
Yeah,
unless something
sounds
comes
like
to
it.
DMV's attention.
Yeah, it's a little scary. I mean, that kind of makes me not want to ever drive in Florida again, but wow. Okay, interesting.
Actually reminds me, I have to call one of my best friends turned 97 today.
Oh,
Wow.
wow.
And have to call her. She lives out in Arizona. And we were talking the other day about how she's older and all these things. And she's like, I just really miss driving. She's like, that's the one thing. But I mean, she's going blind, so she hasn't been driving for like 20 years. But it's interesting how older people, like, that is still like, after all these years of her not driving, that's still what she talks to me about. It's like, I really wish I could still drive. But I know how important that is to a lot, the independence and
Yes.
yeah. So
Well, so the DMV does check your vision. So, I mean, that obviously affects older people more than others. If they can't pass the vision test, then that's one reason the DMV will not allow them to drive.
yeah,
And
she said that, I mean, I've known her for 20 plus years and she didn't drive when I knew her. So,
oh,
like when I first met her, I mean, so she said that she was driving once and saw like something happened 'cause she has macular degeneration or
uh-huh.
something.
Yeah.
Something happened and she herself made a decision to not drive anymore. But it still like, upsets her.
Yeah.
So I have a question. So you said you learned so much in the book. What was one of your like wow aha moments and when you researched your book?
Definitely the life insurance. When I was talking to some colleagues of mine who sell life, colleagues meaning I know them from
Yeah.
networking things.
Yeah.
Um, I learned a lot actually, not just about how speeding tickets can affect the life insurance because they can because you're viewed to be at risk, but also dangerous sports. If you go skydiving, there's a whole laundry list of sports. If you participate, they say within 12 months prior to this application or whatever, they're not going to insure you. It makes sense when you hear it, but I didn't think about that beforehand. You engage in certain recreational activities, you might not be able to get life insurance. So that actually was interesting, even though that had nothing to do with the speeding tickets.
Yeah.
um, let's see, what's another aha? I guess it was more solidified for me, how drivers from out of state are impacted by convictions in Virginia. Because what happens in Virginia doesn't stay in Virginia. I already knew that. But
Hmm.
if you drive through Virginia and you get a ticket, you prepay it or you go to court and fight it, whatever. If you're convicted, it doesn't just stay in Virginia and your home state, the state that you're licensed in doesn't find out about it. States participate in what's called an Interstate Compact. So the Virginia DMV will send your record, because you now have one, to your home state, and your home state, meaning the state you're licensed in, will the take the action against you that they would have had you committed that offense in that state. For
Huh.
example, let's say that I'm just making up things right now. Let's say reckless driving in Pennsylvania is punished with 3 points, and in Virginia, well, that's a bad example because it's a crime. Let's say speeding in Pennsylvania is punished with 2 demerit points, and speeding in Virginia is punished with 3 demerit points. If you get speeding in Virginia, you get 3 points on your Virginia record, which means you lose points. So if you don't have a Virginia license, you're down to a -3.
Hmm.
Your home state will assess 2 points to your record. So even though it was 3 in Virginia, it'll be 2 in your home state, because they assess the points and they take the action based on what they would have done in the home state. If Virginia suspends for something but your home state doesn't, then you will not be suspended in your home state.
Okay. But it's not like an add-on. It's not like you get both.
You do get both.
Oh, you do get both.
Virginia
Okay.
takes the action and your home state takes
Okay.
the action.
Wow. So
Yeah.
that's really not good then. Okay.
Hmm. And if you rack up a bunch of points in once, well, Virginia used to suspend you for failing to pay fines and costs. So if you rack up a bunch of tickets and don't pay it, then you're suspended. And then like your home state will suspend you as a result of that. And then people get in a lot of trouble, especially people who drive a lot, like within the tri-state area. It's common for them to have a lot of tickets in Maryland and Virginia and, DC.
Right. Wow.
Let's see, another aha moment. Let's see, what else? Trying to think, what's another aha? Oh, if you prepay a ticket, you're involved in a car accident and you get a ticket and you prepay it. Well, first thing, that's an admission of guilt, which I didn't even talk about. Prepaying a ticket, you're admitting guilt, and that's why the DMV takes action against you, and it'll be on your record. But if you prepay a ticket that resulted from a car accident, you're admitting guilt, and that can be used against you in a future civil lawsuit. If you go to court to fight it, and you are, if you plead guilty or no contest, that can be used against you. Even if you go in, you plead guilty, you have an explanation. Please don't, give me a huge fine or this, that, whatever. I'm sorry. Fine, great, no fine, but you're convicted, can be used against you in a civil lawsuit. If you are involved in an accident and get a ticket and you go to court and have a trial and plead not guilty and you lose, you are convicted, but they cannot use that against you in the future lawsuit because you did not admit guilt.
Okay.
Now they can try to get it in because a court has found you guilty, but it doesn't just automatically come in. So any admission of guilt will be used against you if there was an accident involved.
Wow. So did you learn, I guess there was no aha moments with texting because everybody kind of knows how bad that is and how bad phones are. I mean, for older people, it's just kind of you just go, wow. But for the teens, they're just so used to having a phone in the car. So.
What do you mean aha moments with texting?
Well, just, now they have apps that turn off your phone while you're driving and things are in motion. So even though phones and driving are still kind of a new phenomenon now, they have a whole lot of ways to make sure that you're not on your phone. So, but I don't know if older people know all those like ins and outs.
Oh, I don't think that they do. And they also recently changed the texting while driving law because it was very difficult to prove, because an officer can say, I saw him text you. We all see it. You're at a red light or someone is going really slow. They've got their phone up here and you can see them. So, they're on the phone, but in order to prove in court that they were sending a text, that's difficult. They could have been looking at their GPS. I mean, so they changed the law. So now it's basically, you can't have your phone in your hand. So you got to either have it attached to your dash or, set up the Bluetooth, which I don't have in my car, but you can set that up so you don't, if your hand is in your phone, that's the new texting. That's basically the new texting while driving statute, and you will get a ticket. And then there are also increased fines if you're doing that in a construction zone.
Okay.
And if you're charged with reckless driving and they also prove that you were texting, there's an additional $250 fine, I think, and conviction for that statute.
Wow.
Oh, and another thing I will note, if you're charged with a bunch of traffic offenses and you're, let's say, convicted of all of them, you don't get points for all of them. You get points for the most serious one. So let's say reckless driving and, failing to yield, which is 3 points. Reckless driving 6, failing to yield is 3. You're going to get 6. You're not going to get 9.
Gotcha. Wow.
Man, failing to yield is 3 points? That's insanity.
I want to tell you something really funny. I was driving to work the other day and there was a stop sign, but I thought it was yield and I wasn't paying attention. And I just kind of blew through it and I'm like, oh no, I yielded, I didn't stop. And then I started to laugh to myself and that's literally what I said. I yielded, I didn't stop. I hope there's no cops.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, the lawyer that does, would you represent yourself?
But I knew what I did too. I'm like, I thought it was yield.
Yeah, no. I was so busy talking to my friend that was visiting from Dubai. Like it was at night and I was tired and we were leaving like where the Reston Town Center area is. There's this one secret parking area that's like one of these tall buildings. And there was nobody coming, and I looked and I turned left on a red light. Like, did they change the laws in America? Can you do that now? And I'm like, what did I do? She's like, it was red. I'm like, what? I'm like, oh my
Oh
God.
no.
I know which light you're talking about. If what's that restaurant called? Bar Bar around the corner from Bar Taco and where the CVS is. If you make a left there and then you go out into the road, that light, is that what you're talking about?
No, it's actually, do you know where that bridge is that you walk over to where the bike path is underneath?
Yeah.
So if you walk over the bridge, there's like an office there, like a tall building.
Mm.
There's this area that you're not allowed to park there anymore, but if you park there and then walk to the town center,
Uh,
that's my secret spot that I've used for years. When you leave that office area and turn onto Sunset Hills,
mhm.
there's really nobody coming, and like it was totally like not an important light, but I was distracted, and so she's like, "Did you change the laws in America?" And I'm like, What?" So, wow, yeah. So tell me about drunk driving tickets or drunk driving charges. Do you help with that as
Yes.
well?
Oh, there's so much to talk. I mean, what where should I start?
Yeah, that's what I wanted to say. Like, should we do a whole nother topic on that one? Because I actually think there'll be other people in the Taboo group that might want to have conversations about that. But
I could talk about a few things in general.
yeah, I
I
was
guess
just curious, like, do you get more calls to represent people for minor, like traffic, not minor, but like those type of tickets? Or do you get a ton of driving while intoxicated type calls?
I'd say probably more reckless driving and traffic, but DUI is a close second. I'd say the offenses I handle the most, um, which has nothing to do with the way I advertise. So I don't know why. Reckless drivings, even prior to the book, DUI, domestic assault, um, drug possession. Those are the most common ones. And driving unsuspended, not so much anymore since they changed the law and they don't suspend you for failing to pay fines and costs. But that used to be a very common one. But in terms of DUI, it's punished with up to 12 months in jail, a fine up to $2,500, mandatory license suspension for 12 months. And they recently changed the law. If your license is suspended, you can get a restricted license in Virginia, which allows you to drive to work, school, taking your kids certain places, doctor's appointments. Um, and then you also have to have the ignition interlock installed on your vehicle for 6 months, mandatory with no violations, and do ASAP classes. It's 2 hours a week for 10 weeks. And because of COVID, they're doing it online now. So that's a lot. So they recently changed the law. If you're convicted of DUI, you can choose to do 12 months of ignition interlock and have no other restrictions on your vehicle, which I always recommend that people do because you can drive anywhere you want to. With an ignition interlock, you have to blow into your car doesn't start unless you blow into it, and it's under a 0.02. But you just have to keep in mind that if you drink the night before, or even if you don't drink and drive, if you know the night before and then you blow into it and you're going to work the next day, if it's still in your system, that could be they could charge you with the violation. So there's so many penalties that are mandated by statute for DUI. Mandatory $250 minimum fine. Like there is no suspending the fine. There is no mandatory jail unless your blood alcohol is at a certain level. So if your blood alcohol is 0.15 to 0.20, for a first offense, there's mandatory 5 days in jail. If it's 0.20 or higher, it's mandatory 10 days. And if it's a second offense, it's mandatory 10 days in jail. If the second offense, yeah, the second offense within 5 years, it's mandatory 5 days in jail. Second offense within 10 years, it's mandatory 5 days in jail. Second offense within 5 years, mandatory 10. The longer period, 5, the shorter period, 10, because they're punishing you more for doing it in a short amount of time. So if your blood alcohol is high and it's a second offense, you're looking at a lot of mandatory time. And then a third offense is a felony. And people don't think that they could. Oh, Alexis had to leave. People don't think that they'll ever get to the point where it's a third DUI, but but they do. It's very common. And when you get to court for a third DUI and you're doing asking the judge to let you out on bond, a lot of people will not get a bond because a judge views you as a danger to the community. And that's one of the purposes of bond. So, I mean, I could talk about DUIs all day. Is there anything specific you want me to?
No, I just unfortunately, one of my former colleagues, he had previous DUI issues, and then on the third one, he hit. It was in the news a lot when it happened. It was a Valentine's Day snowstorm, and he was drinking, driving, and there were two paramedics on the side of the road helping another car, and he hit them. So they didn't die, but he did go to jail for a while. So as I was, explaining earlier, the amount of angst and like stress that I was under for my ticket, which my charge, which would have just been a misdemeanor, right? It was clear something was going on with, this coworker. He was falling apart, and I thought it was due to something, in the office. And so I double checked with his boss, and I'm like, is he okay? And so they just, they couldn't say what was going on, but I knew that there was a trial coming up. And so what really killed me was, I think the months before, waiting to find out what was going to happen to him was worse than when he actually finally went. You know what I'm saying? Like that was so much punishment watching it, like the pure like stress and angst. And so you almost, I know that our court system is backed up, and I know, but it's almost like, okay, the waiting to find out if the blood alcohol stuff was going to come back, and then he was going to be convicted or charged, and then waiting for the trial date, which was, I think, almost a year later. I mean, it's just like the pure anxiety of knowing that his life was about to be ruined. And then after like he got out of serving his time, I'm no longer in touch with him, so I don't know, but I assume that it ruins your life. Like you have a hard time getting a job, so many things, right? So I just wish people would pay attention to all those ramifications. Especially, he just got lucky that he didn't kill those two paramedics. But yeah, and then I feel like when I was growing up, right, in the 90s or whatever it was, we talked about drunk driving a lot, but like, I'm curious about how much they talk about it still. If the numbers have gone down, I know, but like, how much are we still educating people to be careful? I guess with Uber and Lyft and stuff, it's not as prevalent as it used to be, but
I think it has gone down a little bit because of those services, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, there are so many ways that it affects your. I know that a DUI third actually specifically affects life insurance. That charge in particular. And then also, if you're convicted of one DUI, you lose your concealed carry permit for 3 years in Virginia. Like, they just take it. So if you have a concealed carry permit and you're convicted of DUI, you have to turn that in. I don't. I actually don't know what happens with the third. I don't know if they can permanently take it. That's actually something I'm going to look into. But I think that they probably could if they take it away for 3 years just for a first offense.
we probably should at that point. I'm sorry, like, I don't want to judge people, but like, if you've been caught 3 times, it's probably
and it's yeah, like what you just said, it's the caught thing, because I mean, so many people do it and are not caught. And I mean, people always say that. So when you get to the point where you are charged 3 times, think of how many times they've actually done it, and that you didn't learn your lesson the first. Oh, because something else I didn't mention, you lose your license for 12 months with the first offense, a second DUI conviction, 3 years, you lose your license. A third one, it's revoked. You can't ever get it back unless you file a petition with the court asking. And then you got to show many, many years of sobriety and no criminal issues. And I mean, driving is a very important privilege. And people don't think about how, I mean, even if you can't drive for 6 months for reckless driving conviction, think of how that's going to impact your life. And then imagine losing your license permanently, not being able to work. I mean, yes, you can work, but you're going to have to pay a lot of money on Ubers and inconvenience a lot of people to give you a ride. So yeah, those long-term ramifications, like we mentioned earlier. I mean, there's just so many.
Right. When you have to breathe into that device, right? You have to pay to get that in your car. Like they're not
The
putting,
ignition,
right?
yeah, the ignition interlock, you have to pay to have it installed, which is a one-time fee. And every month or 28 days, something like that, you have to go to the mechanic and have it calibrated. They basically make sure, and you
Wow.
have to pay for that.
Okay.
And
I
if you've had any violations, they'll usually extend the number of months that it has to be on your car.
My daughter's trying to come in, honey. This is being recorded, so behave. Um, there's only one person I've ever met that had that on her car. It was my friend from high school, who sadly passed away years ago from drug overdose. But I was shocked when she went to start her car. I'm like, "What's happening? What are you doing?" So, but yeah, no, it's. I'm sure it was very embarrassing for her also, right? So I just can't imagine all the ramifications of this. Hi, did you want to come say hi to my friends? You really were recording, so I may have to wrap this up. We're almost out of time anyway. But Brian, did you want to add anything in the chat? I think we should do another one of these in the future, in maybe a few months, on DUIs, because I think there's a whole hour conversation there for sure.
The one thing I will leave you with on that is a lot of people seem their eyes. I see a hand. Their eyes seem to glaze over. When you start talking about DUI, they think it's never going to happen to me, but it happens a lot.
Yeah, especially with the Taboo group, I'm sure there's people there that could share some stories. I think we may have to just make it a taboo thing about being arrested, because the one topic, the one time on one of the posts, that people had to do points for whether they'd done something or not. A couple of them had basically admitted they'd been arrested. So I think we need to have a conversation there to see who wants to share.
That'd be fun. I'm in.
Yeah, no, I think that'll be great. And you are awesome, Jean. Oh my gosh, I learned absolutely so much. And Brian saying, I really appreciate the advice and expertise. Yes, what such an expert. My goodness, I always like learning about laws. Yeah, thank you for joining, Brian. And that was so nice of Alexis to join. And Jean, we will definitely chat about doing this again with another topic. And I'm going to get your book. I need to talk to you about how to do that. And I think we need to get you in there talking to high school parents and kids.
Yeah, I definitely want to do that. And I told you in the beginning, I'm bad at self-promotion. It just occurred to me that I should have put a link to the book. Can I put that in the Facebook group?
Please do. Yeah, let's do that. And then I want to forward out a link to, maybe do you post things onto your YouTube channel or what?
Yes.
I'll get this to you to do that, and then I can maybe learn from you how to finally get my YouTube channel going.
Oh,
So,
I'll help you with that. Yeah.
oh,
But yeah, I want to get into high schools, or any schools. So if anybody has any suggestions or ins, I don't know if the kids will listen.
No, I do have it for you. I'm friends with someone who's the local PTAs, all the schools communicate, and she might be the head of it. So I follow up with me, because you know how I am. I get distracted. So yay. Thank you guys. I'm hoping you have a good rest of your evening, and I'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye. Thanks, Brian, for coming.
Thank you, Brian.